had to tell my mom when I felt it was right. You know, so when I know she was a little disgusted with me, but she didn't give up on me, you know, she still stayed around. I didn't burn that bridge, thank God. It crushed her when I told her what I was doing, the shooting up. So that kind of was a hard spot for me because I've always been close with my mother. That put a gap in there, you know, because she'd say, you know, every time they come to Plattsburgh, Jimmy, we're going to come down, going shopping. It's okay, we stop over for coffee, or you got the coffee on? Yeah. I said, no, not today, Mom, I'm sick. And I did not lie. I was sick. I just didn't say what kind of sick it was. I was dope sick. But I didn't want to say that to her. I didn't want her to know until.
My buddy at the time, he had gave me that Loratab. It was kind of like finding hope, you know, when I took it, like I felt better, like everything's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? But so I put all my hope and all my faith into these pills. And if I didn't have them, I know what I was gonna feel like. So I was doing whatever I could to get these pills, you know what I mean? And it spiraled out of control quick.
And it took me forever to even think about the idea that I'm an alcoholic or admitting them an alcoholic. Just the idea of that was onerous to me. That would never be me. You know, I've seen it, and I have enough brains to know not to let myself get into that trap. But alcohol, it fooled me. It kind of caught up to me somehow. It just grew little by little to the point where I went over the edge to where I wasn't in control of it anymore.
And I think it was within the next 2 weeks, I fell down our stairs when I was drunk, and I cracked my neck. And first thing I remember, I was in Poughkeepsie Hospital, and the doctor next to me was looking at the x-ray. He said, "You are one lucky person for a slobby drunk." Kind of the first time I heard, you know, a drunk said by somebody, authority figure, and that hurt.
I was 18 years old. I was having blackouts and drinking daily and then using cocaine daily. But I then continued to drink like I was on cocaine, and my life was falling apart so fast because I couldn't own up or live up to any of the responsibilities I had anymore, financially, emotionally, mentally, anything. No obligations that I had to my wife or my children could be met because I was hammered, wasted all the time.
11, I tried weed first, and it was super funny because we gave this girl like $60, like all of us giving $10, like our little allowance. And then when I turned 13, I got into a relationship with a boy, and it was very abusive. And I think it had a lot to do with, you know, the abuse that I suffered from my father and, you know, just my life before. And when I got with him, he was very abusive, verbally, physically.
A father who was an alcoholic and a mother that died. And it's still unclear, for me at least, when, because I was put into foster care at a pretty young age. And I have a twin brother. And we were both put into foster care, and we were adopted at around the age of 4 or 5. Get adopted to a family, and this is what I heard my whole life, you're so lucky to be adopted, they must have wanted you, right? But what they don't know is I was adopted to a family that my father sexually abused me for multiple years, right? So every time somebody says you're so lucky, they wanted you, but for what?
And I'll never forget it. One day we were just driving, and my friend pulled out a yearbook, and she was like, "Forgive me, like this is just what I do." And that was the first time I ever seen like somebody not in a movie like crush up a pill, right, and use it. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here or what's happening, but I also have those, you know, and I kind of like kept it in like as a secret, like that I had them, because I didn't know how I felt about it yet, right? I wasn't too sure. And then I kept continuing being around it and like seeing everybody kind of have a great time and like be totally fine with it. I was like, okay, so I have loads of these, and like I'm ready. And I'll never forget like trying it in alternate ways, you know, like snorting, shooting, whatever. And I was just like, it's all kind of snowballed from there.
I knew I needed help because I was out of control. I could not stop using on my own. if I did stop, it would be for a few days, and then once I was no longer going through a withdrawal, I would feel better, but then still go back to using again. And I did that from probably, I would say 24 to 25. I probably spent a year of hiding it from everyone and trying to do it on my own, and was always let myself down. So I did, eventually it came out to my family that I was using heroin. And at that point I was like, I started immediately crying.
I say I should have done this years ago, because I would love to do things that my age would not let me allow it to do it. But I do not like stay in that moment like, oh, I should have done this, should have done that. It pops in and it pops out. It was just getting my family's love back for the real me, not the addict, you know, the real me.
James C. Gilpin Jr. I live in Katyville, actually. 1 mile before Denimar, I was using hard drugs, you know, heroin, all that stuff, fentanyl, anything to get better, any power. It had to be powerful. Hydrocortisone, Percocet, garbage. I mean, in an emergency situation, you know, where I didn't have what I needed, because when you're sick on that, you're sick. I used to think people was faking it. You're not faking it. And you don't need a lot of days. 3 days is all you need, and your body's gonna want that. And you have to put something in there. You can't do nothing, literally. You don't even want to shower. You can't do nothing but sit in front of my heater with a blanket on me, waiting on the phone steady till I get somebody to say, yep, I got you. Didn't matter what it was. You know, it just had to be a powerful opiate.
Travin Ippolito, Katyville, New York. I was using drugs heavily since 2008. It started when I was in the military. I got injured in Iraq, and then it was spiraled out of control. I ended up getting out of the military and committing some crimes to support my habit, and I went to prison from 2013 to like 2020.
My name is Manuel Rosario. I'm recovering from beer, marijuana, PCP, cocaine, and angel dust. I live in Adirondack Lake, New York. It started with beer. My parents threw a party in the house, and I was very young, and my father's friend would go to the bathroom and I'd drink their beer. I think that's when it all started.
And I had, on my first prison bid, I had came home and just kept doing the same thing that I was doing, and I ended up going back to prison. I mean, I didn't even make it a year home, and they hit me again. So, you know, listening to my friend halfway through my other bid, I was using drugs in prison too. I just kind of slowed down and then completely stopped. And then when I came home, I was completely sober. And I knew the temptations were out there though. You know, everything that I knew from before, that's all that I knew of this area, because I'm not from up here. So I had asked one of the persons I know if there was any kind of, you know, support groups like Alliance, and he pointed me in the direction. And, you know, Cat came down here, and they helped me out for quite a while, almost a year. And then ever since then, I started getting help from the VA, and I've just been on the right path ever since.
I'm Dennis. I reside in Plattsburgh, New York. I'm recovering from alcohol and cocaine addiction. I got in sobriety through St. Joe's in Saranac Lake and Champlain Valley Family Center in Plattsburgh, New York. My sobriety date is 5/7/11, and I started drinking when I was 11 years old. At 13, I was a daily drinker. I did that for a number of years, 35 approximately, before I got sober. You know, I come from a long line of alcoholics, and my mother's side of the family, no male lived over 40 years old, and they all died from alcoholism. And so that would be my biggest hope, that the cycle would stop and that none of my children carry this disease.
My name's Matthew. I'm from Raybrook, New York, and I've recovered from heroin addiction. The last time I used heroin was June of 2018. I first smoked pot in 8th grade, and I told my friends, because I thought it was cool. And I thought that I was cool for doing it. And I remember one of my friends, he said he was like kind of disgusted by it and shook his head and was like a little concerned, also disappointed. But in my head, I was like, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, I'm cool. I'm doing cool kid stuff.
My name is Ray. I live in Plattsburgh, New York, and I'm recovering from alcoholism. In terms of my drinking, growing up in my home as a child, I grew up in a two-family house with my parents and three grandparents, and there was no drinking there whatsoever. It's not something that I grew up with. I didn't drink all that much as a kid, or some beer in high school and college, that sort of thing, but never anything major. Right out of college, I got into my first job. We had 3 kids in the first 5 years we were married. And I was very busy with my job and going to college to advance myself. And I didn't get into any serious drinking at all. I worked in the same organization for 33 years. And I was very busy with that and with the family, and I didn't get into drinking really at all.
Allison Hagedorn. My story with alcoholism, I had retired, and my kids were at the point that nobody needed me as far as I could see. And work, I was moving to retirement, and then I retired, which was the biggest mistake of my life. Even though I was bringing communion to the hospital, I just wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I remember, because I was drinking every day, I had little cups all over the house. And I knew I was in trouble. Of course, my mother was an alcoholic, my sister was, so I saw their devastation. I thought, this isn't going to happen to Allison.
At some point in time, my wife and I started having a cocktail before dinner. And that would be just one cocktail. I like scotch, so I was having something called a Rob Roy, which is scotch and a little bit of dry vermouth. And that went along for a while. Then I retired from that organization, and I went to work for a small college. I worked there for 10 years, working with student teachers. And I didn't do a whole lot of drinking then. I really couldn't. It just wouldn't fit in with the kind of work I was doing. And I really didn't feel the need. It wasn't like something I even wanted to do.
My name is Brianna. I recovered from alcohol and drugs. The places that helped me are CVFC. I live in Plattsburgh, New York, and my sobriety date is November 9th, 2019. So where it mostly began with alcohol and drugs for me was my father has been in and out of prison my entire life. So I've always been surrounded by drugs and alcohol in some form. Christmas, like we had it at my aunt's house, and she has a bar in the basement. There was, constant drinking and using and all of those things around me. So me being the little person I was, thought it looked so cool and super fun, right?
Well, I saw it happening to Allison, and I literally got on my knees. I'm a very spiritual person, and I said, God, you've got to help me. But so I went through all that recovery with my neck, and I was really blessed. When I was waking up in recovery from my neck, a nice gentleman came and sat next to me, and he asked me some questions, but very gently. Well, he was a psychiatrist with training in addiction behavior. Didn't know that at the time, we just chit-chatted. And off and on, I chit-chatted with this doctor, psychiatrist, and I did go to meetings, I went to AA meetings, a lot of meetings. But he was really the biggest help, because I take one step or two steps forward, and he would bring me back to the real world in one step. And I was getting stronger and stronger. And that was 15 years ago, and I'm very content and happy now.
My name's Jake. I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol. It's not why I went to rehab. I thought I was a cocaine addict, and it didn't take very long for them to convince me I was an alcoholic. And my journey started in Canton Potsdam Hospital. So I did a 28-day program there. I went into rehab on December 4th, 2009. However, my sobriety date is October 31st, 2010.
My name is Sable. I am in recovery from opioid addiction. The place that I went for treatment was Clinton County Mental Health. My sobriety date is August 27, 2016. My addiction journey kind of started when I was like around 13, 14, right? I got into an accident. I was hanging out with some friends and we went sledding. And then after that, like going to school and stuff, I kind of noticed I couldn't sit in chairs anymore without my legs hurting. Like I had to have like special accommodations in school. I couldn't walk to like classes as well anymore.
Biggest barrier I have in my recovery is me. That inner voice that I have that tells me that I don't belong here, right? You know, something that's called imposter syndrome, right? Like, is this real, right? My life is super incredible today, but I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop sometimes. So I gotta be very mindful of that and tell myself a different story.
Now I know what the bottom of the barrel looks like. At 5, it could be anywhere from 4 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the morning when you wake up with nothing, sick. That's the worst thing in the world. Now water, don't even have time to reach your garbage can. You're throwing up on your floor. You got snot coming out every hole in your face. Don't get any worse than that. And that's how you stay until you get an opiate.
So when I got out of the military, like I said, I started seeing the VA hospital, and the doctor I was seeing at the VA, he seen what the doctors were prescribing me from when I was in the military, and he was not cool with the amount of medicine that they were giving me. Because in the military, that's what they kind of do, is just instead of helping you kind of deal with it, any kind of physical therapy or stuff, they just, here, take these pills and get going. You know, because that's what, you know, I mean, a lot of people do. They just take these pills and we're able to still go out and do what we have to do. The VA doctor, he said, you know, this is way too much. We're going to start you on something, you know, for the nerves in your back. And so he took me off opiates completely. And it's like I said, it threw me into a withdrawal. I never knew what withdrawal was. I never knew a drug addict before. It threw me into withdrawal, and that's a bad feeling. I think that's one of the worst feelings, is the withdrawals.
My mother was an alcoholic, my father was an alcoholic, but it wasn't abusive. And then they both got clean and sober, and I just got tired from spending all my money getting paid on Friday and be broke Friday night. I believe that there was more to life than that.
When I retired from that, I found that I had a lot of time on my hands, and alcohol really snuck up on me. I had no intention of becoming a big drinker. I had no intention of hiding from anything or trying to bury something or anything like that. I liked the scotch that I was drinking, and I little by little drank more and more to the point where I lost control of it. I didn't even realize I was losing control of it. But at some point in time, it pretty much took over to the point where I needed to have the alcohol.
You know, through high school and all this stuff, I struggle with ADHD today, and I didn't know that. And I felt really uncomfortable in school. I was always smart and I could take a test and know everything on it and be fine. You know, like when I had, you know, a hyper focus or something, I could read a whole textbook, but I just didn't. I couldn't sit in a classroom and listen to people talk. It just was too much for me. And so I started skipping school. And I started drinking during school, and I started, you know, using drugs during school, and I would leave early and I would come late and I was barely there. And, you know, my friends used to get so worried about me, and my sister, who's 3 years younger than me, I remember she would text me every morning of junior year and just write me this long text about how worried she was about me, because at this point I was partying every day. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about, you know, me and alcohol. You know, that was my one love.
Well, there's always stigma in everything you do, and you know, and stigma is a big barrier, and it's a barrier that's also in my own mind and my own making. You know, Just like I would hide going into a liquor store to buy my drink. I would be looking over my shoulders like no one saw me. So, you know, I walked past it 3 times before I went in case anybody see me go in there. You know, so I think I applied the same thing to an AA and outpatient. Like I didn't want to anybody see me go in there until I got serious about recovery, and then I learned that, you know, that we need to come out of the dark and into the lightness and show people that people do recover.
A lot of it was the people that I was around. If you're hanging out with the same people from your addiction and you're doing the same things that you've always been doing, you're gonna do the same things you've been doing. So like if I'm hanging out with, you know, these 4 people, and I know these 4 people, we always would get high together, then, you know, every time I see them, I'm hanging out with them. If they're still doing dope, it's gonna be that itching feeling like, okay, hey, you know, I can do it just this one time. Or it's the feeling of the thought of being sick. You know, the thought of being sick. I think that mentally, even if you're not going through withdrawals, if I have 1 Percocet left in my pocket and I do it, it's like it immediately kicks in your brain. You start feeling funny because you know that, hey, I don't have no Percocets, no opiates, no oxys, no heroin. So it's a barrier, I guess, of feeling, or the thought of feeling sick, the thought of being sick is kind of what stops a lot of people.
And then I started to add things like cocaine and Molly and, you know, whatever drug was happening at that moment I was taking. And so it was just a really mixy time in my life. So when I turned 18, I got caught with the drugs, and, you know, we had to drive back and forth from Plattsburgh because I lived in Rome, so I had to drive 3.5 hours to figure out if I was going to prison or not. At 18, they offered me 3 years in prison, 5 years parole, and a $5,000 fine. And I obviously denied that because I was 18 with no priors and there was no reason for that. And thankfully, it going to court, the Judge Bruno, so like it meant so much to me that somebody would go out of their way, especially a judge, to say that this girl has a chance at a new life and you're trying to take that away from her. And so I ended up joining the drug court program. And in that program, I had 3 conditions. I could end up with my charges dropped completely. I could end up with 3 years in probation. I could end up with 9 years in prison. Those were the options. There was no in between. There was no like, oh, let's go back and like maybe give her a mix of this and that. Like, oh, maybe we'll give her a 6-5 split. Nope, those are the conditions I signed. And based on the way that I was doing, that was it.
I have a very strong family that never gave up on me. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it for my mother and father. I'm gonna do it, but never like doing it for myself. Because I was the type of person that once I got clean and sober, I wanted to show the block, the people that I got high with, that I'm clean and sober. This is the life.
At one point, my wife got into a problem with it, and I was told by a doctor, you cannot drink at home. So I solved that problem. I went out and drank in my car. That didn't work out too well because I wound up getting a DWI. I got into trouble, went to court, wound up with a probation officer, went through some treatment with the family center with my counselor, Jake, went through sessions, group sessions, one-on-one sessions, and I was clear of that and pretty much clean again.
My 2 children, the 2 youngest children, now 18 and 20, and I raised them since they were 8 and 9, and it's pretty awesome. I have a great relationship with them. We talk. I know what's going on in their life. They don't hide from me. They don't flinch when I come into a room like my older children would, and they don't have that worry about if I'm going to come home or what mood I'm going to be in and how I'm going to be. They can tell me things.
And here's when I know I'm in trouble. If I have an inner dialogue that's, why aren't people considering me? How come they're not thinking about me? And how come I'm not being appreciated? And how come my son's not texting me back the minute I text him? And how come my girlfriend's not responding to me? And how come my boss doesn't appreciate me? When I get there, I'm in a bad spot, right? Because when I make everything about me, I know I'm in a bad spot. So that's a warning sign for me. I'm the biggest barrier that I have to recovery.
Recovery to me is accountability. You know, responsibility, and you know, responsibility is being responsible for a task, right? I'm responsible for my children, right? But am I accountable to them? Do I really go to that point and worry about the outcome of what happens to them and where they are and all that? And I didn't, you know, in my addiction, I wasn't accountable for anything because I just did anything, and I didn't care what the outcome was. It didn't have any bearing on me. It didn't bother me that the outcome was no good, and I had disregard for everybody that was around me.
My parents always thought it was like growing pains, like I was kind of really dismissed. I was young, you know, so like what could possibly be wrong at such a young age, right? And I really think about it, like, is 7 years worth one substance? And it's not, you know, and it's just it keeps building, right? The more time I have, it's like, is one substance worth the time that I have, the coins that I have, the people that I've met, and like the community that I help and work in, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't add up anymore.
My recovery since 2018. So the beginning of it, the first 9 months I was at St. Joe's and had a lot of support and was around a lot of people in the same exact boat as me. I would say the most important thing then was the gym and physical exercise.
And when I came home, she's just been in my corner the whole time, like, hey, you know, we can do this for you. I can take you here. I can, you know, you can do this kind of help. And she's always there. But she knows I go through a lot of things. I have some psychological issues from the military with PTSD and stuff. So she understands that I'm going through some stuff, and she knows that, you know, nobody's perfect, but she definitely does. She's definitely probably my number one support. But then, like I said, there's people like Carrie that, you know, that they reach out just because they care, you know what I mean? Like, they don't want, it's not because there's nothing that, she doesn't get anything from reaching out to me. You know, it's not like, you know, I'm not even in part of this program anymore. It's just self-satisfaction of knowing, like, you know, hey, I reached out to make sure he's okay, Dad. There's some people are just good people. I have a daughter now, and she's kind of like the number one thing that I'm staying, you know, clean for.
Small groups, going into a room in the morning and saying, how do you feel? And then you say, good. And then they say, what does good feel like? That was definitely a huge part in the beginning and very necessary, but over time, that's not kind of how it is in the real world. People don't ask you how you're doing, and if you tell them good, they say okay.
When I was getting high and I was harming myself, I did not know I was getting sick as well, because I'm just getting high right now, feeling good and all that. Once I started getting clean and then I go to the doctor, I was losing my eyesight, almost going blind because the drinking and the getting high. When I got here in St. Joseph, I had an eye appointment and there was a swelling in the back of my eye. That's what I say about St. Joseph. They put their heart into it. The nurse sent me 2 hours away to see an eye doctor. I had to get needles in my eye to reduce the swelling and the blood.
That has changed over time, whereas in the beginning it was mostly about physical exercise and working on how I was feeling and identifying feelings and redeveloping social skills, because I kind of lost the ability to interact with people because I was so reliant on having a substance to lubricate. And now I would say it's mostly about being able to be there for people and being a productive member of society. And that was definitely a part in the beginning. I started working a job, I would say I was maybe 3 months in the program when they allowed me to seek employment, and I slowly increased it over time, and now working is definitely a huge part in being productive.
I fell right back into it. I wound up with a second DWI. Something that I never ever would have thought would happen to me, that I would be stupid enough, really, to do it a second time. I'd already been there once. I saw what the consequences were. Now the consequences were worse. Now they're talking about possible jail time. Now they're talking about a longer period of probation. I lost my driver's license. Initially it was for 12 months imposed by the court. And then I got a letter from the state of New York that said it's going to be 18 months. And then because of COVID, the courts shut down, and I wound up with no driver's license for 2.5 years, which absolutely drove me crazy. So I really put myself in a hole.
The barriers I faced on my path, I think there were a lot of things. I mean, you know, all the stuff that I look at today and I love, I think those were all kind of barriers. I feel like with the only things that I've felt blame or shame or guilt is on social media platforms, especially, you know, the comments. Like, I'm always reading the comments. And I tend to like comment back and then just block them because I can't not say something. And I think, you know, for people that are, you know, 16 or like younger or, you know, born out of a cell phone like me, it's really hard to not see those things.
Have I experienced stigma? My circle is so small and it's so recovery orientated, right? Because I work in the field that the people I work with are very accepting of me. The people that I choose to have in my life, because I choose those people, I'm not allowing people in my life. They're very understanding of me. And I say, you know, I got a very small circle of people in my life, but I can tell you every one of them essential in my recovery. And they're people I'm gonna have real conversations with.
And like even doing this job, right, as a recovery coach, like helping people every single day and seeing them and seeing them come in exactly like I walked through those outpatient doors, right? Like I'll never forget that. And I don't ever want to go back. Like I don't ever want to be in that situation again. I don't ever want to go through those withdrawals again. Like I don't want to do it. You know, and like having an actual sober life and seeing the other side and seeing what everybody's talked about for so many years, like I finally have it.
Because there was one time in this community that I knew hundreds of people. If I went to any bar in this town, people knew who I was and I probably knew who they were. But they weren't friends, right? And the people I have in my life today, I can tell real things to, and we can have real conversations with about meaningful stuff.
I do. I like going on hikes a lot, and just being able to stand outside or to let myself just walk out the back door and look. Because before, like you know, you'll notice trees when you're driving by them, but like you don't ever get to stop and like, you know, just look at them. Or like I go to the river and just, you know, I can see the lakes and everything when I'm fishing, or see the mountains, excuse me. But yeah, just stopping and just enjoying that.
Just because I was clean and sober or at that time, life is gonna still show up. There was one guy, when I went back to the city for like 2 years to help my sister out before I came back here, there was a guy that I used to get high with. He lit up a blunt in front of me, but I'm like, yo, I'm going to do exercise. I don't live like that anymore.
Jake asking me, well, how's it working out for you? The truth was not so well. And so the suggestion to go into residential treatment, I finally agreed to do that only for a week or 10 days. I never would have gone for a month the way it turned out if they'd said it out front. But I did get in there, I did get into the program. I did find that it was working for me, and I did make a commitment to stop drinking and do that forever. I realized that if I went back to a little bit, maybe a drink here, a drink there, that I'd fall back into the same old pattern. I was able to figure that out in the 33 days I was in.
I was pretty secretive about being in recovery when I first came up here. I didn't really want to tell anyone because in my head, I placed my own stigma on an addict as someone that's not trustworthy, someone that's a thief. And so I did not want to tell anyone any of this. So I kept it a secret as much as I could. Some people I would let in, and what I did notice is whenever I did tell someone my situation, most of the time they would say, oh, I know someone that is going through the same thing or went through the same thing. More often than not, though, I think it's someone that's still struggling with it. So I think over time I've realized that it is an epidemic, and I'm not the only person that was prescribed pain medicine and ended up liking it way more than I wanted to.
I see stigma more in my professional career about how the people I work with have been stigmatized and how they're treated in emergency rooms and you know, Department of Social Services. And, I see stigma and it's real and alive. I haven't, unfortunately, I haven't experienced a lot of it because I've kept my circle so insulated.
It was just super overwhelming, and not having any idea of who do you call to get help? I called 30 places and nobody could give me any type of direction, or it didn't seem like they wanted to even give me the time of day, and those 30 places was because I went states away. You know what I mean? That wasn't just in New York, that was I had to really do some research to get these places. And just having to deal with, just lack of understanding and just lack of compassion, and just there wasn't as much of the recovery community as there is now.
Today it looks like, I don't want to say that it stops here. It's a long process. It's for the rest of my life. Today I could see life on life's terms. I could enjoy life. I was very selfish in my addiction. So today, I'm so giving that it pours out.
I came out with a determination to quit drinking 100% for the rest of my life. At this point in time, with my sobriety date, November 14th, 2018, I have 4 years and 7 months of sobriety. I have not broken once during that time, and I intend to keep it that way.
Sometimes you see family members' opinions or friends' opinions that you thought that would be supportive of you, and that can hurt a lot too. And even if they're not necessarily in your circle, it still hurts. So, seeing the things like addiction is a disease, or just those really bad comments about addicts and alcoholics, I think those are the things that really cause me to feel shame. I personally have been very lucky in who I've surrounded myself with, but the social media world has been the biggest issue for me.
If you could get someone to smile and make their day, because you never know what the other person is going through. There's places that they don't have water, clean water, or to eat. So violence in this world today is very, very strong. The violence is very, very strong in this world today. So if you could have one person to reverse life, okay.
Yeah, I knew my grandma was
It was all pretty overwhelming, and it just seemed like every time I tried to even open the door for myself, it's like everything else slammed it shut. There was probably 50 times I should have given up, but if I really thought about it, okay, well, when I wanted narcotics, I came up with the money, so returning bottles and stuff like that, I went for it. I had to put in the same effort into my recovery as I did my addiction. I had to equal it out, or else I wasn't giving it a fair shot.
Since I've recovered, or since I've gotten out of the treatment plan and felt that I was determined to be alcohol-free, going back in time, thinking about alcoholics, I knew some, but I had in my mind that that was for other people. That certainly wasn't going to ever be me. where I went over the edge to where I wasn't in control of it anymore. And I was sneaking drinks in the car and going out to buy bottles when I was supposed to be with family or friends. And I don't know exactly how that happened or exactly when it happened, but I lost. Alcohol took over.
That I'm still here and I'm able to, because I had overdosed. I had overdosed in 2016. It was bad. They had to Narcan me twice. So I almost died because of the addiction, but then I still kept using after that. So it's different it's good to be able to, stop and realize, like, I made it through. It was bad. Like, I was doing probably $400 to $500 a day in drugs. Like, I was doing a lot. And now I can just it's good to see that I can just relax. I made it through, like I beat it.
My hope for recovery is to part of these relationships that mean so much to me. There was a time in my life where I was driven by other things, and I think the most important things in my life today are relationships. So my hope in recovery is to continue to foster these relationships in a way that, maybe that some of that comes with age too, right? Like the things that used to be important to me aren't so important to me. The time that I spend with my son, the time that I spend with my friends, the time that I spend with my girlfriend and her children, those things are very, very important to me.
Doing recovery my way, right? That was my own barrier, essentially, and stigma for sure. And I think too, being 7 years ago, there was like an ignorance to addiction, right? There was like a lack of understanding, a lack of education of really what addiction was, how it impacted each and every individual, and what the opioid epidemic really was.
There it is. Okay. I would say working is, especially now, the biggest part of my recovery. Being able to, having to need to show up on time, and having a lot of people rely on me, also having to deal with handling a lot of money. It's definitely more than what I originally expected it to be. I never would have guessed how much time owning my own company would take up. It has completely engulfed my life, but I enjoy it, and it is very chaotic and it's extremely stressful, but in a way I feel like I was made for it.
Yeah, my parents obviously were real good. I lost a brother to addiction in 2020, and that was one of my big things too, to get cleaned up, because when I growing up looking up to him, that he was unstoppable, that there's nothing they could, they could break him, and he ended up dying in 2020. And I was in prison. I couldn't make it to, the wake, none of that.
My recovery, my hope in this recovery is just to experience those relationships in a way that I can be present. Because I lived so much of my life that was so selfish and so internalized about me, and I walked through life without any acknowledgement of my impact that I had on other people. Right? I just left this huge wake of destruction in everybody's in my path that I wasn't even consciously aware of, or I didn't care. And now I'm very mindful about how my behaviors and what I do, how those impact other people, and I do that I want to live that in a very intentional way. So those relationships mean everything to me in my recovery.
Obviously, like going to the hospital and trying to get any type of like guidance of inpatient or detox or whatever, like I wasn't given any information, and I had a 9-hour hospital visit that I was only interacted with 3 times, and I left with more questions than I did answers, and just the looks on everybody's faces, like nobody wanted to make eye contact, and just like you came in as some sort of like catchable disease, right? Like you were just completely like disregarded.
Oh, recovery to me today, it looks beautiful. Now, I can do all the things I want to do. I don't have to chase nothing. I don't have to wake up sick, feeling like death, playing the phone game until I could get, but now I just get up, I have my medicine, I take my medicine, I go about my day, I have my coffee, I go outside, I smoke my cigarettes. Sitting outside with my coffee and my cigarettes, that's still constitutional, naturally. It's part of everybody's day. And then the shower time, and while I'm out there drinking my coffee and my cigarettes in the morning, you know, that's I'm looking around, planning what I'm going to do. Because I have like 1.5 acres of grass that I mow, take care of. So I'm outside almost all day right until it's time to go and fall asleep. I like my time laying upstairs watching television. I do like that. I watch TV with my mom every day because she was right into this Andy Griffin, you know, some of those older shows. So I still watch them, but every time I say, okay, here we go, Mom, we're gonna watch some TV. And I hate that shit. But now I watch it every day. 5 o'clock in the morning, Andy Griffin's on, and I can't. My sleeping schedule is so messed up. I haven't got control of that yet.
It's software engineering for, like I said, computer coding, doing front-end development. I want to build web applications, build, you know, websites. One of my buddies that lives here, he does the back-end engineering. So we want to build a project that'll be able to help a lot of people, and you know, we're able to do that. Like I said, because I'm not worried about drugs anymore.
They were always in my corner, but to get to that point, I had to help myself. Because no one, family, friends, and no one, like I said before, you cannot do it for anyone else but yourself. So I had to help myself for others could help me in the recovery.
Right now, recovery looks like, to me, like the biggest thing I can think of is I've got my family back and I've got my life back the way it had been for years and years and years, and the way I had lost it for a while, for quite a while. And I've now got that part of my life back again.
My life isn't guided by what other people think of me. I don't do things because of other people, and I don't have to wake up and not know if I can drive. I don't have to, you know, like my brothers, my little brothers, they're my favorites, they know it. And they, you know, they're playing football this year, and like they know I'm gonna come to at least 3 games, and my partner's gonna come too, and we're gonna be the excessive, you know, brother and sister that are holding the big signs and super annoying in the crowd. You know, my little sister knows I'll show up to her plays. My older sister may not like me right now, but knows that I'll show up for her no matter what. And there's lots of, you know, those things are I think what recovery looks like.
I care about our community. I care about our people. I know I'm acutely aware of what it feels like to say I'm never going to do it again and do it again. And never do it again and do it again. I'm never going to do it again and I do it again. I know what that feels like, right? So I really put a lot of time and effort in trying to help some people, right?
You know, my mom and I have this beautiful relationship, and if I ask her, like I started a business this year and she invested in it for me because I was just like, this is it. I know this is what I want to do. And she's like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know. I just know. And she's like, and she invested her money in me and was trusting me to, number one, give that back, even though she didn't ask me for it, you know, but there was still this like, okay, I'm never going to get this back because it's my kid, but I still was able to give her that money back. And like, those are the things that I get to do today. And I feel like that's what recovery looks like for me. I pay my bills on time, like all those cool things. And I know how to get insurance.
That we're usually the last ones to know. So if people are concerned, there's probably something to it. And if you have the ability to honestly take a look at the impacts of substance use in your life and be honest with yourself, because that can be very difficult, right?
I don't think that there was anything other than myself that really like pushed me to stay in recovery. Like, I think that a lot of people, you know, are like, oh, I want to get sober for my kids, or I want to get sober for my parents or my family or any of those things. I think those things just came along the way as I began to love myself. And as I began to love myself and start to I started to just gain gratitude for like the things in my life that were happening.
Recovery to me now is living and maintaining a life and functioning in life without a mind or mood altering substance and not being chained by the cycles of addiction. You know, I get to wake up every morning and feel gratitude that I'm here and that I didn't end my life and that I got the help that, you know, it was different from most people, but I got the help that I needed, and I still work on myself every day. And I just got a place with my partner, you know, and that's something that was never gonna be a thing before. I didn't even have a dollar, you know, and I have a fulfilling purpose in life. You know, I get to work in my community, I get to help people in mental health and addiction exactly where I was. And it's so rewarding and so fulfilling and something that I've always wanted to do.
One of my customers, when I disclosed to them my story, they said that their son was actively using and basically in the same boat that I was once in. And that was tricky because it made them very hopeful, which was great, but then their son didn't follow the path that I did. And I feel like, and now whenever I see this customer, I'm afraid to ask because I have a feeling that the answer is gonna be the same as last time, which is, you know, they're still out. So it's sad to, like, as much as you want to keep the hope alive, of course. And I believe, you know, there was definitely a point in time when the hope for me was very bleak, and I'm sure my family thought this is it and this is the way it's gonna be and didn't know how to act. But they didn't give up and they kept the hope. But unfortunately, you know, the statistics are way against us, very, very much against us.
Well, things that helped me in recovery, I had good support network, right? Obviously, after I reached like a little over a year of sobriety, the outpatient I actually went to came up to me and wanted me to be a peer there. And that's how I totally got into all of this, like recovery coaching and everything. And it was obviously a big deal for me, you know, like that I had done so much in a year and changed my life so drastically.
I bring them right here to Alliance. And then I tell them, like, I've got 2 people that come to see me still that were using when they came, and I got them switched over to Suboxone. Listen, I know a drug is a drug, but still, at least that one, it won't kill them, you know, and it's safer.
But I had a friend out in California. She does this stuff for, you know, rehabilitation, and I've actually, you know, she's had me on the phone talking to some people before, just trying to, just having them listen to my story, because a lot has happened in my life for sure, and to be able to, for me to get cleaned up, you know, definitely, if I could do it, anybody could do it, for sure. That's what it comes down to. Like, that's my next thing, is I wanna kind of point people in the right direction.
Like being able to like go and be like a recovery coach, like I opened the door to all these coworkers, right, that were super supportive and super understanding, and it kind of connected me into the recovery community in a different way, right? Because like I didn't have AA, I didn't have NA, I wasn't really introduced to the recovery community. So like now the door's open, and like I had a whole new sense of like a support network, and I got to meet some really great people.
I will follow your dreams, follow your goals, understand who's around you, who you hanging out with. You gotta go the same path. Like, I cannot today hang out with people that are drinking and getting high. I have to hang out with people that are going my direction, a sober direction. And I'm not gonna be a hypocrite and say, listen, I can't hang out with you because you're drinking again. No, I'll shake your hand, how you doing, and everything. And then I'll keep moving on. That's why it's so important, people, places, and things. People take that for granted, but that's the real deal about sobriety. Removing yourself from a place that you did all your drugs and all your drinking.
I was speaking about Jake and the rehab and so forth, and I really want to add the importance of the support my wife has been in my recovery. The fact that she believes in me, the fact that she has faith in me. She's let me know that she believes that I can do it. She believes I have the strength to do it. She knows I'm going to do it. That kind of support on a daily basis that I know is there. She doesn't talk about it every day. We don't talk about it all the time, but I know that it's there. That strong belief in me makes me want to live up to it.
Well, outpatient. The support of my counselor in outpatient. There was a very prominent figure counselor that was my group counselor. His name is Monty, and he was very, very active in my recovery, and I still speak to him about once a week today. And he was definitely in there. I actually I met a gentleman in St. Joe's who was from Queens and also moved to Plattsburgh into the same halfway house and actually works with me in Champlain Valley now today. So that friendship that I developed with this gentleman was my first real friendship ever in my life. And we're still friends today.
I don't think that anybody has to deal with an alcoholic or addict's behavior. I do think that as knowing the stuff that I put my family through, I believe that even though you are family, it does not mean that you have to put yourself in the way. Mental abuse, physical abuse, verbal, all those abusive things because you're family or because, your friends or any of those things. I think that if they ask you for help, then you give it to them. But I think as far as that, you go help yourself because that's all you can. My grandpa says a cool thing in meetings, and it's, put your hands in your back pocket, and the only ass you can save is yourself.
I've come to believe that people recover. People recover. And I have no reason, and I tell everybody I meet, people recover. I've seen it happen, and I have no reason to believe it can't be you. Right? People, you're in charge. You're in charge. So I want people to understand that they're in charge. And if they want to make a lifestyle change, if you want your life to be different, here's a cliche. If you want your life to be different, do something different, right? It sounds a little simplistic, but it really, that's what it boils down to, right? And in my own life, like if I want to lose weight, I better eat different, If I want to, do something different financially, I got to spend my money different, right? Like, I'm in charge. I'm not a victim.
So it's community, connection, purpose, and continue.
My next step, though, is I've been talking to my wife, is that I want to start helping other people. Like I want to help mentor, because I'm in a position now where it doesn't matter to me to see another addict. Like I don't think about myself doing drugs. My main focus is like, hey bro, we can get you some help.
The hope that I have is that the way things are going now continue. That I can continue with my wife and my children and my grandchildren and live that family life that I now enjoy. My hope and my plan is to keep that going.
My hope for recovery is for people to learn how to live versus exist. Just remember that anybody can get sober. The trick is to stay and live sober. And with living sober, it's always going to be, I believe, and from what I've seen, that it's going to be a lot better than you can probably imagine for yourself or for your family member or for your partner or for anybody. And, don't give up.
My recovery, my hope in this recovery is just to experience those relationships in a way that I can be present. Because I lived so much of my life that was so selfish and so internalized about me. And I walked through life without any acknowledgement of my impact that I had on other people, right? I just left this huge wake of destruction in everybody's in my path that I wasn't even consciously aware of, or I didn't care. And now I'm very mindful about how my behaviors and what I do, how those impact other people, and I do that I want to live that in a very intentional way. So those relationships mean everything to me in my recovery.
Hope of recovery for me, I mean, I hope I get many more years of recovery, right? I mean, August 27th is my 7 years, so I'm excited to even reach that. And I would love to further my education and just see how much more I can use my brain and my experiences to make a difference in my community and to the people around me, and just continue showing people that hope is real and that recovery is a really beautiful thing once you do it, you know?
You have to really want it for yourself, because it doesn't matter if you got friends or family telling you, hey, you need to get cleaned up. Like, no addict wants to hear that. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you're not ready to quit yourself, you don't want to hear that. So a person has to want to quit themselves. And if you really want to quit, like, the first step, all you gotta do is just pick up a phone, or even just come down here. You know, like, then there's the times on the door, there's phone number on the door. You can look on Google, I'm sure, and it's gonna pop up. Just the first step is making a call. And that's really like the first and last step.